And certainly Viktor Orban's stronger crackdown on the border, reinforcing that border, has been very popular with his own people inside Hungary. We go to Zoltan now. Nice to have you with us.
Hello, how are you?
We just lost you there for a moment. I'm glad you're back with us. Can you confirm if that meeting is now underway with Angela Merkel and Viktor Orban, and what is the potential to reach a satisfactory outcome here?
Indeed, as we speak, the meeting is on. As a matter of fact, in a couple of minutes, there's going to be a joint press conference. Well, I believe the Hungarian position for the past 3 years, as well as for the past 3 days, is fully clear. And that is, we have a firm stance in, or rather against illegal migration, stopping it at the borders of the European Union, because the name of the game for the past decades was that people were coming illegally. And we believe priority should be going for defending the external borders. Everything else comes after.
But to that extent, if I could just come in there, that has also created tensions, hasn't it, with Germany, particularly Germany's decision, Angela Merkel's decision initially, to open the borders and allow refugees in.
I hope you can hear me because there's some problem with the line.
Yeah, we've got you.
We've been very firm on not letting anybody on the soil of the European Union until there was a legal foundation, there was a legal right for that. And I think that is happening actually in the European Union. The recognition that illegal migrants, asylum seekers, should be put under some kind of surveillance until their case is being judged is just one development. And that's why we flatly reject any kind of retake-in from those Western European countries who let people come into the European Union 3 years ago. You know, we have witnessed over 400,000 people coming to the European Union through Hungary without our ability or the European Union's ability to stop that. Others were inviting them and others were not fulfilling their duties at the outer borders of the European Union. Keep in mind that geographically it's impossible to come to Hungary without crossing another European member state and Schengen state.
And Zoltan, this really goes to the heart of this compromised solution that's now being put forward. You mentioned these processing centres, these transit centres where the refugees are going to be held while they are processed and potentially sent back to the first point of entry, the first country that they entered inside Europe. How is that going to work? Will you end up with a situation where you could have potentially tens of thousands or more people kept indefinitely in these transit centres on the borders with a refusal of some other countries to take them? What happens in that instance?
That indeed is one of the major problems and questions ahead of us. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the major consequences of what Europe have made it happen, actually. I mean, Western European countries, when they let people in hundreds of thousands come to the European Union, though they know and they are very obviously were aware of their incapability to fulfill any kind of criteria. Therefore, there are hundreds of thousands of people in Europe today who have no legal status or no legal right to stay in the European Union. That's why we, again, flatly reject taking back anyone. And that's why we have introduced the transit zone system into our borders back almost 2 years ago. So we have already established and shown example in that respect, actually, how that should be happening. Only those can come to Hungary, therefore, to the European Union, who have some kind of legal fundament.
Zoltan, there's certainly been a successful political strategy. Indeed, there's been a demand from many countries for tougher borders. And that a nation to control its borders, that aspect of sovereignty is understandable. But then there is the question of a humanitarian approach. How do you present a humane face to this, a humanitarian approach that acknowledges that these people are often desperate, seeking refuge, with the need for countries to maintain sovereignty and control over their own borders?
Well, I would put my answer into 3 different lines. First, it's more humane to stop people and keep them at bay where they would like to set a foot instead of letting them come and then sending them back. Therefore, we, and Hungary is participating beyond its proportions and financial proportions in the European Union. We were the first to promote, reaching out to those areas, to those countries who are in need and who are releasing migrants towards Europe. And again, humanitarianism has rather become a kind of a camouflage for supporting illegal migration, not only at the land route, the so-called Western Balkan route, but also on the seas. And that business model should be cut. Willingly or unwillingly, humanitarian groups allegedly working in line with international law, but basically assisting human traffickers and organized crime.
Zoltan, is there another aspect to this? And that is that countries, and I know in Hungary that this has been part of what your Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said, that it is about the identity of the country as well, that you want to maintain a sense of what it is to be Hungarian, what it is to be the nation state of Hungary. That it is not, and I think this is a phrase that's been used at times, overrun by migrants. To what extent is this about the sovereignty of nations, identity of nations, and to that extent challenges the idea, I suppose, more broadly, of an integrated European Union?
Well, you have to keep in mind that Central European countries, including Hungary, has a different attitude towards their own national identity and sovereignty in face of what happened in Western Europe for the past almost 60 years. We have just regained our independence and national sovereignty from communism 30 years ago. So it's in many respects is very good for us that we were not going through all those procedures, which in Western Europe has resulted in parallel societies. So Western Europe was obsessed with integrating people coming from all over the globe by giving up its own original identity. Instead of us, you see parallel societies existing in most Western European countries. So for us, this is a mistake which we would like to avoid, and that's why we stick to our national consciousness, national sovereignty, and would resist migration coming in different waves for the past couple of years.
Now, your Prime Minister has used a phrase that has captured a lot of attention, this phrase, illiberal democracy. It sounds almost incongruous or a contradiction in terms. It's also been said that it may be a fast track to authoritarianism. What do you mean by this illiberal democracy? What is the outcome of this?
Yeah, well, if you cut the political bullshit here, I'm sorry for the expression, because that's what we've seen for the past 4 years coming from our liberal adversaries, which are trying to, stamp us with some kind of illiberal description. Keep in mind that the Prime Minister's original remarks were on the liberal world order in terms of the economy. Successfully, Western European politicians and Western European press made it a stamp which, tries to depict the country in a form which it has never been, because we have always maintained, and we are very proud Christian Democrats. And that's right from the very beginning, since 2010, that's what we are trying to communicate. And that's the philosophy by which we have perceived our reforms domestically, economic and social, as well as our perception of the world, including our stance on illegal migration. Keep in mind that our political community was taken to the European People's Party group in the European Parliament by Helmut Kohl, who was a true Christian Democrat, and indeed he's the model or the figure we would like to follow.
Zoltan Kovacs, it's good to talk to you. Thank you again for giving us your time.